while they come in. But we are so excited to have you all here for our Dietitian Dream Jobs Regulatory Nutrition at Nature's Find. I'm Emily, Chief Marketing Officer at All Access Dietetics. And today we'll be talking with Rachel Janis, Regulatory Affairs Dietitian at Nature's Find. And she'll be talking about her role working for a sustainable food startup, their award-winning and innovative products, her various job functions, advice for networking and transitioning throughout your RD career, and we have some more fun questions in there that we're going to go through. And so we'll also have time for Q&As at the end, so you can drop questions in the chat as we go through. If you have questions specific to what we're talking about or anything pops into your head, we'll get to them at the end, and then you'll also receive a replay of the event tomorrow and some more resources from Nature's Find. So I'll start introducing Rachel. So Rachel is obviously a dietitian. She works in regulatory affairs at Nature's Find, which is a fungi-based vegan foods biotech company in Chicago. It is an innovation-centered food company, and Rachel gets to utilize her dietetics background to help influence better-for-you food development, drive claims development, shape nutrition-focused and accurate marketing language, and participate in recipe development and tasting panels. She completed her studies at St. Louis University with a degree in nutrition and dietetics and a certificate of business, followed by completing her dietetic internship with Massachusetts General Hospital. And Rachel began her career in clinical dietetics at Loyola Medical Center in Chicago on the lung transplant and cystic fibrosis team. She then decided to transition out of clinical space and returned to intern life as a public relations intern specializing in nutrition and food clients at Weber Shandwick. And after this internship, Rachel took a position with Nurture Life, which is a direct-to-consumer, ready-to-eat meal service for children, where she led regulatory affairs and menu development. And then obviously from there, she is gone on to join the Nature's Find team. So Rachel enjoys all things food, especially exploring the unique culinary opportunities across Chicago with her husband and 2 kids. And we are so excited to dive into the questions. First, we're going to share a little bit about Nature's Find, and we have some great resources for you all. So first up, we have a giveaway and an opportunity to join a dietitian community. So Nature's Find's registered dietitian community is for RDs and RD-to-Bs, so anyone can join it. And this provides exclusive access to resources developed by the RD team, coupons for you and your clients, and their newsletter. And this newsletter will also be sharing paid brand ambassador opportunities coming on the horizon. Nature's Find will be announcing them in this newsletter that will help satisfy some volunteer hours and core competencies for our RD-to-Bs out there. So make sure to join that RD program to get that newsletter when those ambassador opportunities are announced. And it's completely free to sign up. And for the giveaway, when you sign up, you'll also be entered to win the Ultimate Smoothie Kit, which is a Vitamix blender, Phi yogurt, and more. So we'll drop those links in the chat there for more information about the Nature's Find RD program. And then also definitely want you to get connected with Nature's Find on Instagram, LinkedIn, and then we'll also drop Rachel's LinkedIn in the chat if you want to connect with her more. Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. She'll be dropping those links in there. And now we're going to learn a little bit more about Nature's Find before we go into our Q&A. And fun fact, if you were at our RD2B Summit this year, they were a sponsor, so you may have learned a little bit about them already, but super excited to share more. So let me share and make sure my audio is sharing so you all can hear it. All right.
It all started in a volcano. Millions of years ago, actually, when a remarkable little microbe was born. And while it lived there undiscovered, the world's population kept growing and growing, as did our impact on the planet. Until suddenly, feeding everyone wasn't guaranteed. But when a group of explorers, scientists, and optimists doing research for NASA discovered the microbe, it turned out to be uniquely remarkable. A new source of nutritious protein the world had never seen before. So the scientists got curious. The explorers hypothesized. The optimists wondered. And inspired by nature's own technology, they invented a new way of fermentation and created Fynd, a complete protein with all 20 amino acids. Perfect for making all kinds of really delicious nutrition packed foods. Perfect for feeding anyone, anywhere, anytime, without the need for sun, rain, or soil. Perfect for feeding all 8 billion of us, and future generations of us. And making Fynd uses just a tiny fraction of the land, water, and energy that traditional protein uses. Which means together, we can give the earth a breather. Let it rest, rebuild, even be renewed. From finding a microbe to feeding the whole globe. This is the story of nature's Fynd, and we can't wait to meet all 8 billion of you.
Right, amazing. Love that commercial, and want to make sure everyone can hear me again now for the Q&A. Okay,
Yep.
great. All right, so Rachel, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're so excited to go into these questions. And just as a reminder for anyone who's just coming in now, if you have questions for Rachel as we go through these Q&A questions and some that were submitted, drop them in the chat. We will have a live Q&A session at the end. So first, we're going to start with an easy one. What is regulatory affairs nutrition?
A great question. Regulatory affairs in and of itself, right, is kind of mapping out and understanding how the CFR, or the Code of Federal Regulations, which is what the FDA uses to govern food, how that applies to food. And while it's a giant book and reference source, as a regulatory affairs individual, your role will be making sure that the products you're selling at your company or companies you work for meet all regulations as outlined in the CFR. Now, some of these regulations are not related to nutrition, so there's definitely a part of my job where I'll have to source information on sustainability, other aspects as well, even just legal jargon on a label that you see on a food product. But the nutrition side of it, which you all know, is a lot of the labeling, nutrition facts panel, ingredient scrutiny, vetting, and ensuring you have all documentation to support everything about the product that you're then publishing a label on in the market. The nutrition side of it on the title that I have right now is really because I am a dietitian, and in working with the past couple companies I've worked at, I think they've seen this role for opportunity to enhance, I guess, marketing and sales, in a sense that having a dietitian work in regulatory affairs and the claims that go with a product, having insight into what consumers might want, what actually is better for you, what are nutrients to highlight. It's kind of that lens on the regulations. And so I really work a lot actually with both product development to create a product as well as marketing to talk about it.
Amazing. And it's super interesting because we don't really get to know, not even in our grad school or dietetics programs, we don't really get to know too much about this field. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, of course.
Super interesting field, super exciting. So thinking back to when you were completing your undergrad and your internship, what was your dream job at that point? And did you ever see yourself working in the setting where you are now?
Yeah, my dream job was always to work for a food company and to somehow be involved in making products that aren't junk, basically, right? Like if someone at, a highly processed food company offered me a job, I don't know that I would ever consider it just for that reason, right? So in my internship, I'm originally from Minneapolis, so Target own brand was kind of a dream job at the time, to perhaps, be in Minneapolis and work on some of their product lines in some capacity. So it actually is in line with where I am now. However, as you mentioned in kind of my bio, I did start in the clinical field, which was also great. I really did enjoy, the complexities and intricacies of lung transplant and cystic fibrosis related dietetics. It was extremely challenging and well worth it, but I did always kind of want to return back to that concept of working in food that's going to help people. So.
Great. And yeah, like you said, it sounds like you are where you wanted to be, and it's a really great to hear that you can transition from clinical. So even people are in clinical right now and thinking they have a completely different dream or interest, you can transition to that even within clinical. I'm curious who's on here. Is anyone's dream job to work with a CPG company and in this type of a role? I know we have someone raise their hand. Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm considering it, but above among other things.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Yep, we have another raised hand. Fantastic. Um, so speaking more about the fields, since we don't really find out about it in our internship, even in our undergrad, how did you find out about the fields and what sparked your interest? Because you've had that kind of dream from the beginning of working in this sort of field and realm and with the CPG and with a food company. So how did you find out
Sure.
about this role and what sparked your initial interest in it?
Absolutely. So when I was doing my dietetic internship at Mass Gen, one of the rotations was an elective with focus on business entrepreneurship. And I found a small, or an intern before me, I should say, found a small food company, Kettle Cuisine, and they make soups outside of Boston. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like an amazing elective, it's a food company. That's always been what I wanted. So I went and worked for them, and really what they had me do was start working on regulatory pieces. But at the time, they didn't call it regulatory. They're like, hey, can you run nutrition facts panels for these soups? Can you do some ingredient review and help us understand how to source a lower sodium option for X, Y, and Z? So there was a rotation that kind of had piqued the interest of like, okay, so what is this work with labeling and compliance, that I'm doing? And so I'm glad I had that opportunity to take an elective kind of rotation. Um, and then after being in clinical for a while, I stayed pretty on top of networking in Chicago. I stayed a part of CAN, which is the dietetic community for Chicagoland. There was a food and business networking association as well, and I was part of that. And an old friend slash colleague from my internship was actively working at a PR firm representing food clients. So I feel like I have to hand it to her because I was like, I like clinical, but I want to do something different. I want to work in food. And she's like, well, do you want to be my intern? And I was like, what do you mean? So that was kind of the transition point is there was this opportunity. And again, probably just from networking and staying in contact with everyone you meet, honestly, in dietetics. That's so important. But I had that opportunity to, really think about it and then applied to be a public relations intern focusing in nutrition. But on that track, and it's a big PR firm, so there's a few of them, and those big PR firms often take on food clients. And I think you'll see when you dig, which I found a lot of that team is often dietitians, whether they're writing the communications or just reviewing for accuracy and editing, you you need to know a decent amount about the CFR because you're representing food clients. So all the regulations for those advertisements and public relation activities that they're doing and representing, they're trusting the firm who they're hiring, the Weber Shandwick or whoever PR firm, to be legal and accurate and not get them sued, right? So that was kind of that secondary intro to what is regulatory. And then it made it pretty crystal clear in working during this internship, this secondary internship, again, not a DI opportunity, but separate, but it made it pretty clear that my foundation in nutrition and dietetics was exactly what this role should be. Like that makes a ton of sense, right? Just from our base knowledge. So it's kind of how I fell into it a little bit. Yeah.
Great. And I think that definitely is a good point for everyone here. Even if you're a dietitian, if you're in your schooling, keep in touch with your fellow students, your fellow interns. Just build those relationships, join organizations like Rachel did. And you never know what doors will open and what those connections may bring later on, even if it's not for another 5 to 10 years. You never know. So super important. Good advice there. So we have a fun one now. What is your favorite Nature's Find product?
Ooh, This is easy for me anyways. I love our peach yogurt. And I say yogurt, but regulatory mindset, it's not standard of identity traditional yogurt, right? It's a vegan yogurt. So a dairy-free vegan yogurt, and it's awesome. I'm not a vegan myself, but I love our peach yogurt. My kids love it. My husband loves it. Like everyone I give it to, friends and family really enjoy. So yeah.
Great. And then I know obviously there's a lot of different products within would you say yogurt is the most common one or most popular one out of your product line or what are
I'd say it's definitely most popular. And well, thank you. The cream cheese is awesome. I like the cream
the
cheese. I especially love the chive and onion, whoever wrote that in. But our yogurt it's our newest product line, and we've only really had products in the market for 2 years. So the first product going into market is basically when I started at Nature's Find. So it's been kind of cool to see each product line roll out. And then yogurt, I think, from a nutrition perspective, is our best showing. It's a good source of protein and fiber, which is pretty obviously rare for a yogurt. You're not finding fiber. But our ingredient the fungi protein, it is a source of fiber also, which is kind of cool. I kind of geek out on that part from the nutrition perspective, right? I mean, other people join our company because sustainability reasons, bettering the world and the environment. And while that is really cool, I was very much so geeked out on how cool is this fungi microbe protein source? Like how neat.
Yeah.
And it's been a really rewarding opportunity to kind of see all the science come to life too with an ever evolving like category, we hope, of food, fungi protein. So
Yeah. And how can you not be excited? I feel like it is such a unique product and company and using that ingredients, it's like the perfect mix for a dietitian.
totally, totally.
So as a dietitian, how did you approach this new role working in this kind of new area of nutrition field that you weren't familiar with before with learning about the Phi protein and
Really.
that?
Sorry, you heard my dog. But I think when we're in our DI program, even in undergrad, you're really pushed to learn beyond the basics. And that's kind of what this role took. Like I knew I wanted to work in food, but frankly, no one's going to hire me to be a brand manager or even communications role if I didn't take any of those associated classes per se in undergrad or have a previous job in that role. So I kind of took it upon myself after that PR internship to really dive into learning the Code of Federal Regulations and like how it applies and how to leverage myself as kind of like a resource for the first company I worked for, Nurture Life, to say like, hey, I think we could say this really cool claim about this product, and that's going to elevate your sales and marketing, abilities. And this is the legal pathway I can follow. Let's check it with the lawyers or food lawyers, right? And so I do think it was a bit of like hands-on learning, but we all know how to learn, right? Like we get giant textbooks thrown at us. It's nothing different. It's just a resource, and you need to know how to use it. Um, but I think that's important. Like I did not go in as an expert just from one PR internship by any means. I'm still forever learning. Um, and when I started at Nurture Life, my job title at Hire was not regulatory. That's important too. It was, I think, so registered dietitian, menu design, something with the menu, which to be fair, it's a direct-to-consumer company at that time. I was guiding the menu. It was for children's nutrition, well-rounded meals, at your doorstep, right? So a very dietitian appropriate approach. But then as I kind of, took what I've learned so far and really delved into that opportunity at that company, I was like, I am doing all regulatory. It's just not called that. And I requested a title change. And then that led me to be able to get the job I have now in the realm of regulatory. But I mean, every dietitian is well equipped as long as you have the right resources to be in regulatory. Like, I think, and Emily, when we were prepping for this, I was like, man, I wish this was part of a DI track, like how to do it, because everyone who's an RD is so qualified to do this job. It's just not, I guess, like advertised to us that way. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad we have you to be able to share about it and share with our community about this role because it really is something that is so unique and you're have been in it for quite a while. So super valuable to have you sharing this advice. And I think what you said too about learning about it even before you were in like a full-time role for anyone who's interested in CPG worlds, regulatory worlds, or even something else, you can take that upon yourself to learn about the fields, gain skills even before you're actually working in that position. And that'll just make you that much more viable for that position. So
Absolutely.
kudos to you for doing that. That's great.
Yeah. And advocate for yourself for a title change. That was honestly, one of the biggest learnings. Like, go get what you want, get your way in. And once you're in, work hard and, navigate yourself through, honestly. So,
Yes. So let's see. Before we go into the submitted questions, we're going to touch a little bit on what we just talked about, actually. But first, what do you love about being a regulatory RD at Nature's Find?
man, lots of things. I honestly love my work, truly. And I love that I'm a pretty social person, but I love that I get to kind of sit between product development and marketing. And what I mean by that is, part of our company's mission is to make better for you food, which again, it's a great starting point to make sure you're kind of aligned with your company, right? But the developers are very intelligent food scientists, but they are not necessarily health minded or nutrition minded. Well, they know the value of a carbohydrate or a fat source, right? But they don't know what it does in the human body, or like this ingredient from a certain supplier, like is that a good thing or a bad thing? So working with product development to kind of tweak their formulas within reason, right? I'm not a food scientist, but I can offer suggestions. One the other day was we're working on something that will have a sweeter profile. It's not yogurt, but I can't tell you what it is. But we were talking about how are we going to sweeten it, right? Without, and I was like, well, how much actual fruit can we put into this? Or what formats? Can you look at dice? Can you look at purees? Can you look at nectars? All things we all know, right? But like helping to narrow my developer onto, I'm like, is it possible, or is that going to change your viscosity too much so you don't want to do it? And he's like, oh, okay, I can play with that. So having that dialogue with your developers from your nutrition mindset is that one part. And then secondly, marketing says, well, we want to say this. And while I don't want to be like the anti-fun place, like, sorry, you can't say it. And again, I'm going back to the CFR, right? This is why you can't say it. It needs to be accurate. I try to flip that as much as possible and say, well, like, okay, I get it. You want to talk about fiber, but here's what you can say about the fiber. Here are a few iterations. Please copy edit because that's not me, right? I'm not a communications individual. But here's like a punch list for you to consider because I hear you what you want to say. So you kind of end up helping with ingredient scrutiny, with claims, with marketing, with development. I like touching all areas. I get to work with sensory a lot and do tastings as well, which is a really cool perk. You really end up touching in regulatory, especially regulatory nutrition. You touch so many areas. I convinced our marketing team to use an RD for our blog, and she's been rocking it. So again, I'm not a writer, but I know the message we're trying to say, and so just that ability to shape has been really cool, or influence in a positive way has been really cool.
Yeah, and it sounds like you get to use all different parts of your brain too, and it's probably not the same every
Absolutely.
day with going between so many different departments and supporting different initiatives. So that's
Right.
exciting too for anyone who likes not the same thing like every
Right.
day.
It's not the same every day or any day for you
Yeah.
can plan your day and you're gonna get derailed a little bit. And that's okay. It's not like crazy, but it's fast paced and
Yes.
fun. So
And then before we go to the submitted questions, going back to what you touched on before, what do you wish was reviewed and covered more during dietetics training, that would have prepared you for this role better?
totally. I mean, I think it's obvious from what I've said, but I wish there was a core competency about regulatory nutrition, right? Like I wish, because I think you hear in your dietetic internship, you hear them talk about you can be nutrition communications, or you could be, there's a few other like CPG kind of typical RD positions. Um, but I never heard the word regulatory, even at that like micro elective internship, no one used the word regulatory. They're just like, oh, can you do all our labeling for us?
Yeah.
So I kind of wish A, it was identified, and then B, that there could be some coursework. Like it deserves a week of your dietetic internship. And I actually talked to some internship directors at Fancy this year, and
Mhm.
I was like, what do I do? How do I change this? Because I need more of us. I would love to hire, if I had the funding, which maybe one day, but I'd love to hire 2 to 3 more RDs who I could have helped me do what we need to do at Nature's Fine. And that's just one small company. Like we're not even Kraft, like, or whoever.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm hoping to influence change as well, from the beginning, to open, RD to be eyes to the opportunity, because you're so well qualified. The combination of all of our math and science skills, food service, it comes quite in handy when you're trying to sell into food service or retail operations, right? Um, you know so much about a food company more than you realize as an RD. So,
And I love your little advocacy for the field too. That's so important. Like you said, you had the RD starting on the blogs. Eventually, you would love to hire more RDs on your team to support you. And like you said, you're just one small company. So imagine if we could do that across the board and have more dietitians in the regulatory space.
yes.
Fantastic. Okay, and awesome. We have some questions here. We're going to get to those at the end. So, like I said before, drop your questions in the chat. Now we're going to go through some questions that you all submitted. We had really great, fun questions. So, for the first one, how did you make the transition? We touched on it a little bit, but how did you make the transition from clinical to interning in public relations? And where did you apply for that internship? Because we kind of already talked about that.
Yeah. I
How's
can
it?
go into a little more detail though. So working at Loyola, there is a media team at any hospital. Um, And at some point, our clinical director was like, does anyone want to be like the nutrition voice in the media team? And I was like, me. So I got to do tiny little interviews with like a men's health magazine I mean, there was just a few, and they weren't clinical topics, which is funny, but I was like, I get it. They want a dietitian from a medical center. Fine. Um, so any kind of small opportunity like that, I would say like take it, right? To build your resume a bit. The networking communities are another huge thing, locally and specific to the category of work you want to be doing as well. Whether I didn't personally go through the academy, I know there's like those small groups you could join, absolutely. But I think even more powerful is probably whatever community you're in, like what's out there. Even if it's not stating for a dietitian, but if it's something about food and business in this category, anyways, like join. Go to the dinner once every 2 months or once every quarter. Um, so I think that was cool. And then um, it did, of course, help that I had, it was, again, an old dietetic intern from the class below me, actually. So she was younger than me from Mass General, who is now in PR. So yes, it helped for at a networking event, her to say, hey, Rachel, if you're really serious, like, do you want to be my intern? Like, ha ha. But I was like, no, I'm serious. So networking always helps, always. I will say, once I started looking into it, this was a PR firm, and it's not the only way to get into regulatory by any means, right? Like, could I potentially got hired at that middle company, Nurturelife menu planning as a dietitian, and then still change my title? Like, yes, I could have. I don't know if they would have. I don't know, would I have gotten that job if I hadn't done the PR internship in between? I'm not right. I'm not sure. It doesn't hurt to apply though, for those kinds of positions. A lot of those D2C companies, by the way, Home Chef, Factor, all those middlemen D2C, look for those jobs. But anyways, and then the other firm I applied to is Edelman, which is another PR firm here in Chicago. Again, I lived here. Chicago's a big city. It's also a food city, so that was definitely to my advantage. But there are lots of food clients looking for experts to help with their public relations and marketing. And again, not a writer here, so I was not looking to that. Some people love it, and that's great, but I honestly, the first time I transitioned into business world from clinical world, I had to like really focus on not writing short notes in acronyms like I did in clinical notes. Like it was a big shift. So you don't need that experience. But I think, yeah, networking, use your resources. Don't be afraid to apply, apply yourself, like take those opportunities to volunteer for the media gig here and there, whatever. Those are all little nuggets I'd say that it helped for sure.
Amazing. And that's funny. I do find myself still, I'm nowhere in clinical, but using those acronyms, and we probably all do, just
Yes,
so
yes.
ingrained and we learn them in school.
Oh, yeah.
That's great advice. And I second all of that you said, the networking, putting yourself out there, applying, even if you maybe have imposter syndrome about it, you never know. And I think there are a few questions related to this, but this one was submitted. So, do you need any prior experience to begin a career in regulatory affairs?
No one wants to hire you without a regulatory affairs title. Um, but I think so I found, that was like pretty evident to me. There are positions that are implying regulatory affairs that often are willing to take on RDs. And I found they're usually called labeling specialists or I'm trying to think what another one would be, but that's like the most typical labeling specialist. Um, and or just getting in however you can to a company that you believe in. I'd say, but that is hard, right? No one wants to hire you in a CPG period if you don't have prior CPG experience through an intern sort of position. So I'd look for positions to intern at any company and then just to have that under your belt so you could, push along further when you're ready to actually make a career move. But I don't know that that's changed, that someone will hire you for regulatory without any regulatory expertise, because frankly, unfortunately, most people, especially CPGs, like they don't really get our training as a dietitian. Like they don't really know what you're capable of. Like I would hire someone personally, like if I could hire right now, I would hire RDs who I know already know how to use Genesis and other labeling softwares. I'm like, done, hired, because you're detail oriented, you understand nutrition, you understand how to talk to vendors, food service. Like I know, but I'm already an RD, right? So breaking that barrier of like believing in this group has not really been flushed yet. So you have to get a little crafty. Like, don't wait for a perfect spot. Just get in where you think you want to get in, or a starter position where you could change your title and then move from there and like maybe suck it up for a little bit kind of thing.
Yeah. And we just have a note from, she may be a regulatory dietitian, but she said there's a LinkedIn group called Dietitians in Labeling and Regulatory Compliance. So that's also another resource.
Yes, that's a great resource. Yes.
I'll put that into the chat.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. And then we had one more submitted question that we're going to go through. This will be a fun one and
Okay.
probably varies, but what does a typical day in this role look like?
Totally. I have my planner right here. I mean, okay, so as in any job, you're going to run through your email, put out any fires, right away. But I would say a typical day looks like having some sort of kind of multidisciplinary group meeting or two on different products we're working on or projects we're working on, where you're having regulatory pulled in with kind of marketing, PD, engineering, logistics, etc. We'll have a couple of those, group meetings because everyone has meetings, right? I'll be talking to vendors about something. So I was talking to a natural flavor company this morning because I needed the right documentation to substantiate how I label the flavor on our yogurt. So when you see the word strawberry, that doesn't mean nothing. It means strawberry. And there are regulations that I know I need to meet before I can tell marketing, yes, you can put that on the cup for yogurt, right? So going back and forth with a vendor on any kind of nitty gritty. So pick anything on a product label. You need all the documentation to substantiate, and it's my job to find the contact, get the info, and make sure it's updated every year. So I always update for every single vendor we use all regulatory paperwork. In addition to kind of ingredient and nutrition information, you're getting safety information. There is quite a bit of overlap with our quality team and regulatory team because regulations are in place, right, to keep us safe. So there's quite a bit of chitter chatter all day with quality. We're kind of, always in contact. Um, I handle certifications. So certified kosher is a great one. So getting the kosher certificate for each and every ingredient that goes into the final product. Work with the rabbi to make sure that our product certification's up to date and it's renewed every year. That could be one angle. There was an innovations brainstorm today. So again, I'm not getting pulled in for those kinds of things because I have a regulatory mindset. It's because I'm a dietitian, which is cool. So we're looking at a couple more, I'll say nutrition forward innovation pipelines. And I love this kind of stuff, right? And so I'm working with our developers and our business development team as well. So product developers, business development, helping them to focus on what attributes would be appropriate to highlight a certain specialty product that they want to make. So in addition to that, then there's like the less sexy fun of it. Like, okay, you need to look at the CFR and understand what the RAC is, which is the reference amount customarily consumed, because all of your labeling and claims have to refer back to the CFR's RAC. Like there's a giant table, right? So you have to find your category and understand what a typical serving size is for that. I can't just say, eat the whole tub of cream cheese and then you'll get blah, blah, blah. No, the serving size for cream cheese is 28 grams or 2 tablespoons. And I have to refer to that when I talk about the product, right? So reminding my business developers who are all hyped up on some great idea that like, oh, that we need to stay in our lane here and make sure we're ideating about, the savviness of this product, based on the right serving size. Let me look here. What else? Oh, I was doing, because we're a protein company, an amino acid analysis of both our Phi protein as it compares to all other vegan proteins in the market. Like I've been working on this project to really understand how we compare to others in the same, based on 100 grams, based on X amount of grams throughout, right? So I use a software. Asha Genesis is like the most popular. You may have used it in your internships probably. But fun fact, they price gouged everyone, so everyone left, including our company. And so I'm using a new software called Flavor Studio, and I'm putting all my inputs into Flavor Studio, right, to run nutrition analysis or recipes. So that was the last part. We have both product developers as well as chefs at our company to demonstrate the versatility of our ingredient. So our chefs will whip up really cool stuff. We worked with Stephanie Izzard the other month. If you dig, you can find all that fun press. It was really cool. But Hannah, our chef, will be like, okay, Rachel, am I meeting the mark on X, Y, and Z? I'm supposed to have 8 grams of protein in this serving of whatever. And again, it's not a retail product we're selling. She's just showcasing our ingredient in other culinary applications. So I work with her a lot. So I'm doing all the things. But as you can see, and it's all coming back to dietetics. Like it's all the foundational knowledge that we were taught in undergrad, in our internship, short of like knowing how to navigate the CFR, which again, I guess is mostly what regulatory is, but it's a lot of intuitiveness, honestly. And then you're like gut checking yourself, like, oh yeah, that's the right regulation. Like, yes, that's the technicality I have to be aware of. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds fun. And like you do have those, obviously, like you said, more of those projects and digging into the CFR and all of that. But I feel like you get to do a lot of different
A
fun.
lot of cool different stuff. And a startup is a startup. So, right, I caveat, right? Like if I worked at regulatory at a really large CPG, I would have a lot less of this opportunity for
Yeah.
like the multidisciplinary options. So,
Yeah, that's actually also something good for people to consider too, if they're looking into
totally.
regulatory roles and getting into this field is startups versus established companies and how those can differ. Good point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will say one other thing, which I know wasn't our question, but I'm just thinking about it. Like, I love this job and I think it's amazing. And all dietitians should do it, but the unexpected pay increase compared to clinical is not insignificant. it is quite significant in comparison. And so that alone too is motivation, I mean, not that money should be only motivation, it's not, but as we all know, dietitians are pretty underpaid, um, just across the board. Like your ceiling is low in a clinical setting, right? You can only get to a certain level. Um, and I feel like I could continue to climb for forever in this category, in this space, which is really cool, right? But I think that's another big perk of working in this. So.
Amazing. Good advice too. And I know the compensation survey from the Academy came out last month or so. So that was, if people have access to that too, you can look at that and see, yeah, where those pay gaps are and how you can advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we'll do one more question. So for everyone here and then everyone who's watching the replay, what advice would you give to a dietitian or a future dietitian who's trying to find their dream job?
I would say, and I kind of already alluded to this, but just be scrappy. Um, Dietetics, a lot of times we are like really following a path and like only staying on our path. And I don't know if you'll get your dream job if you stick only to your path. You kind of have to take opportunities as they come, ask lots of questions, network your buns off. Don't lose touch with old colleagues, you know. Yeah, just keep your eyes and ears open, truly. I think looking for a way in any job title you're qualified for to a place you want to be is a great opportunity. Like if you're motivated, you'll move around. You just got to get in. So be scrappy.
Great. Love it. Great advice.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to share, we have some great questions in the chat. Before we get to those, just wanted to share again for anyone who wasn't on in the beginning, there's some really exciting resources from Nature's Find. So as a reminder, Nature's Find has their registered dietitian community, and this is for dietitians and future dietitians, and they'll provide access to exclusive resources developed by the RD team, coupons for you and your clients, and then also their newsletter. And there will be paid brand ambassador opportunities on the horizon that they will announce through this newsletter, and that can help satisfy volunteer hours, core competencies, and kind of get you more experience there as well. It's completely free to sign up. And then when you sign up, you'll also be entered into a giveaway to win the ultimate smoothie kit, the Vitamix blender, Phi yogurt, and more. So we'll drop the link to the RD program in the chat. It will also come in the replay email. And then also make sure to connect with Nature's Find on Instagram and LinkedIn, and also with Rachel on LinkedIn. We'll put that in the chat as well. And we have a few questions. Let me go and read through these. First one was, what skills or experiences do you believe are essential for dietitians transitioning from a clinical setting to a role in regulatory nutrition or CPG? And what specific job titles do they look for on your resume as experience to know that you've prepared for a regulatory affair job role? Also, talked a little bit about it, but you may be able to elaborate on the skills and experience.
Yeah. I do think actually clinical skills translate pretty well. You're always crunching numbers for recommendations that you're making clinically, tube feeding, TPN, etc., even nutrient replenishment. Like knowing how much vitamin D to give someone is actually quite translatable to how much vitamin D I want to put in a food product, right? Like if I'm putting extra in on the ingredient line. So things like that. So staying abreast of, I think, just current clinical recommendations translates well to everyone wants to be healthier who's eating food, right? Everyone wants the miracle food to help them. So all of your knowledge from, what do we do to help clients and patients improve, whether it's a medical disease like diabetes or renal disease or general wellness, all of that knowledge translates really well. Math skills, I'd say I end up using a lot of basic math like all the time because I'm, again, looking through serving sizes and daily values, and I'm always kind of equating. I'm reading, we send out labs to, like Eurofins does lab reports for nutrient panels, so I can check my work, a comparative from what I'm calculating based on, what they're sending back. So I think all of that savviness, and then Demonstrating your ability to kind of translate information from the science-minded to the consumer-minded is really important, right? Because you're taking literally product development. What are all these crazy ingredients and the attributes they're reflecting in the product? And then now I need to put it in words to my marketing team and make it legally compliant. So you're doing the same thing in a counseling session, right? Like you're taking this base knowledge, translating it in a language that's easily digested by, no pun intended, by the recipient, right? So that's all relatable. It would always help to know the CFR. I think the tricky part is like putting that on your resume that no one's going to care. No one's going to care if you read it and if you know it and you know how to resource it in a resume sense. I do think you'll have to find either labeling specialist opportunities, other, I'd say CPG or business, even just not even CPG, but just business-minded food opportunities to intern or work for less than desirable, right? For a little bit to learn. And then I think working your way up is the last part of it. You've got to like move and shake and realize that like once you're doing all the labeling for everyone and you're putting something on a packaging or writing about it on their website, like you're doing regulatory. I will say too, there is another side of regulatory I didn't touch on as much. One of my colleagues and counterparts who does regulatory focuses on international applications for our novel ingredient. So novel foods are a whole category of regulatory globally. And you have to, apply to each country you want to sell that new ingredient in. So not every company is going to have that situation, but I have a whole separate teammate who her background is toxicology and public health. And that makes total sense for why that's her pillar of regulatory. And I do all product facing regulatory. So there is depth to that there, right? Like, could I hack it together? Probably. I wouldn't sell myself short, but I would be spending a lot more time reading and, refocusing my work on something else. So I do think labeling specifically is kind of a dietitian's entry point oftentimes. Nutrition facts, labeling, menu design, all of those things.
Amazing. Sounds like there's a lot of transferable skills, definitely.
For sure.
Before we go to these other ones, Alex, I know you have your hand raised. Did you want to ask your question live?
That would be great. Thank you. I just want to say thanks, Rachel, for coming to chat with all of us. I always love hearing from people in the field, and being on the brand side is definitely where I see myself being. I'm in grad school right now, have my RD, but I was kind of wondering, so with these regulations, have you ever had a product that meets regulations but is maybe not the most nutritious it could be? And what do you do in that situation? How do you advocate for nutrition of that product? And would your teammates, and do they really give you that voice to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. It's also that exact point is what motivated me when I started at Nature's Find. Like for example, cream cheese is delicious, but no one eats cream cheese because they think they're being healthier, right? Like that's so I I think having ingredient information, reminding marketing what we might want to say as a company, getting their blessing, and then going back to my developers and say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? Would you consider doing that? Or asking the questions of what if you changed an ingredient from this to this? Is that going to ruin your product? Like trying to not step on their toes, but provide insight. And I do think, again, it's a smaller company, not tiny. We have 200 people at our company. So it's not 10 people, right? It's not 2,000. Everyone knows each other pretty well, and we've established great rapport. And I hold that, kind of like I'm not the healthy police, but I am looking to always make things better. And what are your thoughts on this? And I use marketing to my advantage, and I say, hey, I know you want to claim this or that or whatever, and bring it back. So then I usually have buy-in to request such an update or edit to maybe an ingredient line. Yeah.
Great question. Love it. Let's see. All right. Now that you're in the regulatory space, where would you recommend looking and applying for similar positions? Kind of touched on that a little bit. This is actually a good part of the second part of the question. Is it worth it to reach out individually to companies and inquire about these roles versus just like searching on LinkedIn or Indeed?
Yeah, I would do both. Go to your local networking events because they show up there, right? I would look for, I mean, big companies, big CPGs are, I think, less likely to bring you in. Um, Smaller startups or mid-range companies are much more excited right now to hire dietitians in any capacity. And I would look for that. I'd look for direct-to-consumer companies who are selling food. There's a lot of them, right? Like convenience is king right now, and they need labeling help and claims help like they do. So that would be a great place to start as direct-to-consumer business, mid-range company size or small. Um, and then also, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Mid-range. Oh, and labeling specialist, I guess. Yeah, was the other kind of part. But yeah, I think, yeah.
Great. This is actually a good question. How much education are you doing in your day-to-day role, such as teaching nutrition to people who are not experts in nutrition? So I'm assuming this would be your fellow employees, or maybe if you're doing like outreach education.
Yeah. Honestly, not a ton right now. Every once in a while, I will say, like, I work with customer experience too. Forgot to mention them, but someone will write in and ask about maybe it's allergens, maybe it's is this diabetic friendly? Like, there could be a whole host of nutrition questions that come in, and I'll work with our consumer response team to answer appropriately and honestly. So there's some of that, but I'd say for my internal folks here and there. Like maybe in the beginning of when I started working, there was a bit more though, to be fair. So day to day now, a little bit less. When I first started really diving into claims and health and nutrition and like what is not allowed and what is allowed. Um, what do consumers say they want? What do they actually want? Working with our insights team to kind of hone in on what the differences mean has been kind of an interesting point. But yeah, I think a lot of them, I give them lots of resources and I'm like, hey, this is my cheat sheet for this, this, and this, use this. Or please do tag me in reviewing any article that gets written about us, both from a regulatory and nutrition accuracy sense. Like, and they just know to do that. So, in a good way, I think work is delegated to me just because of that, right? Versus someone saying, tell me how to do it, and then them trying to do it themselves. They're like, Rachel, you should do this, so which is great and fine and fun. So not a ton, I guess, is the answer.
Great. Yeah, she said she was referring to the team. That is interesting that you respond to consumers. Oh, but he actually just had this might be for more for Ashley, who's on the call too,
Yeah.
that the access code is not working for the resources. We'll get back to that in the email tomorrow. And then our last question is, do you have internship opportunities?
Not yet, but I would really like to. I'm working with my boss to kind of like showcase the why. And again, internship opportunities are typically unpaid, which stinks for the interns, but I do think that would be amazing to have interns here and there, maybe a few a year, like once a quarter even, to help kind of crunch through everything. So I promise I will continue to work on that. And if we do, we'll put it in our newsletter. So we have that quarterly newsletter that Emily mentioned. And, with the help of my copywriting marketing team, I will write the content, right? And it's mostly fungi focused, but then there's some like kind of like Nature's Fine news at the bottom too, where if it's brand ambassador opportunities and we do events nationwide where Ashley would be looking for people to help. So whether it's that or an internship opportunity in the future, I hope. I did at Fancy speak with someone in the academy who gave me resources on how I'd like be able to maybe, I don't know if the right word is apply, but like showcase the appropriateness of having interns in this area and then like get it counted for you because like it could be an elective, but it just depends on if your program's going to say yes, that works or not. And so there might be a way to go through the academy to kind of like get a pre-approval for these sorts of positions. So I'm still kind of looking into that too as an option.
Yeah. And on that note, I guess with Nature's Find, when that rolls out, and with students who are in their grad program right now too, you can make your elective rotation. For the most part, your director should be kind of flexible and you can make it whatever you want to be. So it's another way to get that regulatory experience and potentially get that counted. But I love that you're advocating for dietitians and future dietitians.
Trying to, yeah.
All right, that was fantastic. I learned so much about regulatory nutrition that I didn't know, and I'm sure everyone else here did too. So thank you so much. And everyone, again, we dropped the link for the RD program in the chat. That is also will get you on the newsletter and into the giveaway. It's free to sign up, and that will just keep you in the loop if there's any ambassador programs and things like that in the future as well. So definitely check that out. Connect with Nature's Find on social, connect with Rachel on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for sharing all of your insight. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.